Our old buddy Larry Cohen, the former president of the Communications Workers of America, now the head of Our Revolution, weighs in on all things primary and Bernie. Check it out. Leave your comments, ding the bell, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our channel. On the line with us is our old friend Larry Cohen. Larry was the president of the Communications Workers of America. In fact, I think one of the very first times he came on our show was in that role as president of one of the nation's largest unions. He is now the chair of the board of directors of Our Revolution and the board chair of the Democracy Initiative. He's also a member of the Democratic National Committee, and I believe is on the Rules Committee. Is that right, Larry? For the what do you call it? The convention coming up.
Convention.
There you go. Thank you.
Convention rules. Yep.
And a close friend of Bernie Sanders, and of course Our Revolution was started by Bernie's. So Elizabeth Warren just dropped out of the race. She has not endorsed anybody yet, but she has said that she's going to continue the fight for Medicare for all, for free college education, and I'm not quoting her verbatim, but the essence of what she said, and for cleaning up our banksters and our systems and whatnot. What are your thoughts? And I don't know if you had a conversation with anybody in the Sanders campaign about the announcement that she just made.
Is a great leader. I've worked with her for years and couldn't say enough positively about her. I think all the groups that are supporting Bernie will be echoing that as we discuss it later today. I think that Bernie did speak to her. Apparently, so did Vice President Biden. Obviously, we all hope that she will support Bernie, but she did make it clear in the statement in front of her house that she wouldn't be endorsing anybody now or for several days. Mm-hmm.
At this point in time, given the number of delegates we have, let me pull up 580, 530, whatever it is. The Real Clear Politics, yeah. Right now, Biden is 596, Sanders 531. We still don't have the full count from California. I think there's still 79 out to be counted. But is there still a solid path to the White House for Bernie Sanders?
Absolutely. I think the next 2 weeks are critical. Michigan and Washington State on Tuesday are particularly critical because of their size, and Michigan, not only the size, but also the importance of that state in the general election. So looking at turnout, particularly from Detroit, Wayne County. But there's definitely a path, as you just said. The delegate separation is minuscule, and it's forward ever for the Bernie campaign and for the groups like ours that are supporting him.
Yeah. Lee Fong is somebody I've known for years. He's a reporter now with the Intercept. He used to be with Center for American Progress. Left when that kind of went a little more corporate than a lot of their reporters were comfortable with. He just put together a Twitter thread the other day about Bernie's campaign that I broadly agree with, and I'd like to get your take on it. He said the spike in voter turnout in the midterms came almost entirely from moderate suburbs. This would be in 2018, a trend that continues now in these primaries. These voters prioritize a return to civility and normalcy. They don't see the U.S. as fundamentally corrupt. And therefore, Bernie, and then he goes on to say, Bernie's campaign, for some reason, leaned into the activism brand. And this does not appeal to the normie, as in, normal Democratic voter over Biden, whose core image was a nice bipartisan guy who likes ice cream, and Obama. Bernie's #1 challenge in this campaign was not to be pigeonholed as an angry activist, but as someone who could work alongside Obama and arguably even work with Republicans and moderate Democrats to get things done as a statesman. Instead, Lee Fong says, he went in the opposite direction and fell into the Corbyn trap. The campaign seemed like it was critically wounded by Hillary's 2016 smear campaign, and spent much of the time defending socialism and doing everything they could to prove that they weren't all white Bernie bros, a complete waste of time. And I would add, I have been saying on this program for a year now that Bernie needs to be talking about completing the New Deal and the Great Society rather than talking about Finland and Denmark. And I'm just wondering, if you think I'm crazy on this, what the campaign thinks about this. Talk me off the ledge here, Larry.
Yeah, no, well, I mostly agree with I totally agree with you and somewhat with Lee. The one thing I would disagree with is I think the campaign has shown enormous support among Latinx voters all across the country. Secondly, if you compare South Carolina this time and last time, much bigger number of African-American voters. The difference here is what's happened in the last 6 days in terms of the attacks on Bernie, not just the unity around Biden, but how those folks, are basically giving an anti-Bernie message.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and it's been all over the media. I mean, I've been almost daily criticizing CNN and particularly MSNBC, with all these Republican commentators that they have given shows to, Joe Scarborough and Nicole Wallace and whatnot,
right.
and people like Claire McCaskill, who never met a lobbyist she didn't want to take money from, who have just been viciously attacking Bernie. Chris Matthews as well. He's gone now. But all that said, it seemed to me like the way to respond to that would not be, oh my God, you're attacking me, I'm going to attack you back. The way to respond to that would be, I can work with everybody else. We can make this happen together.
I think absolutely that's what he needs to sound like and be like, especially when you're this close to the nomination, which he is. And I would use your frame. He does use it. He doesn't stick on it. FDR, Great Society, that's the path I'm in. The notion of reform is as old as this country itself. And, I'm a reformer. And, yes, we need a political revolution in terms of voting rights and money in politics and other structural legacies from slavery in the 18th century. But I'm a reformer, and that's a hallowed tradition in this country. It always has been. That's what makes this country great.
Yeah. I mean, I had a call this morning from an African-American woman who was saying that she voted for Bernie in 2016, but this time she's voting for Joe Biden because it just all seems so divisive. And I get it, and I'm probably paraphrasing her badly, but and apologies to that caller. I'm sorry I don't recall her name, and I realize that a lot of that pugilism, fists up is not so much coming from Bernie. It's been coming out of the media, and if it was directed at me, I would have a really hard time not responding in a way that was angry. But I hope that we can move together and that our revelation. Now, you and I had a conversation a few weeks ago about Warren's impact on the election and going into the convention. Whether this would be a good thing or a bad thing for Bernie. I'm curious. I guess I started out by asking you what you thought her leaving the race means. Where does this leave? But more broadly, where does this leave the progressives who are worried that I was just a minute ago criticizing Bernie for being confrontational. I guess would be a soft word. I'm very, very concerned that Joe Biden has performed so badly in the debates. He seems to have a difficult time holding multiple thoughts in his head at one time. He does great with a teleprompter, but when it comes to answering a question that has multiple pieces to it, he'll bail. He'll say, oh, I'm out of time or whatever. I'm concerned that when he debates Bernie, he's going to look bad, and if he debates Trump, it's going to be a problem. I guess there's not a question there. These are my concerns right now, and what are your thoughts on this, and how can we all work together to support both these guys, Bernie and Joe Biden, and whoever as well as the eventual nominee? I don't want to wound either one of them, frankly.
Yeah, I think that is a fine line when you have this kind of now binary choice, and March 15th before very big primaries in Illinois and Florida and Ohio, is the next debate. It'll just be the two of them up there. So I think that is difficult. So I think that the key would be that part of what Bernie sounds like is when I am the nominee, I will work with you, Joe, to unite both wings of this party, and we will figure out together how to do that. And now, if I was advising Biden, I would say the same thing. He's done a terrible job in terms of unity, grossly exaggerating the cost when, in fact, a huge savings to Medicare for all, loving to call Bernie a revolutionary when Bernie's talking about a political revolution in terms of issues, ideas, the structure of the democracy in this country. And, Biden needs to tone down the rhetoric as much as Bernie does. Yeah. And I think Bernie will do that. But I think it's not just the rhetoric. They need to talk about power sharing, as we have discussed in terms of AMLO in Mexico or elsewhere.
Yes.
It's going to take real power sharing to convince the combined electorate of these candidates and beyond to turn out in Wayne County, Detroit, and Philadelphia, where I grew up, and Milwaukee, so that we can beat Trump in the Electoral College.
Yeah. Do you think that there is a chance that, like AMLO did in Mexico, where the turning point for him in that election came when he announced his cabinet, basically, and they started operating as a shadow cabinet and making public, speeches about, here's what I'll do when I'm Health and Human Services Secretary. Think there's any chance that the Sanders campaign might do something like that?
Well, I think that's the kind of conversation he had with Senator Warren yesterday. Not so much will you support me, but how do we work together? And then I think your points on that are absolutely spot on. And he needs to go even further. He needs to, eliminate this notion that he's on the fringe and instead say, no, this will be a joint effort, and together we can do this. It's black and white. It's working in middle-class people. It's from every part of the country. And we can do this, and here's what it will look like. So It's not just the words. It's here's what it would look like.